I am here with Papi or Cole from the Yaku Corp. Is it Yaku Corp? Yaku Verse? What is the umbrella?
Absolutely. So we've actually shortened it just recently to just Yaku.
Just Yaku.
Is all
It's a hard
encompassing.
A.
Yes.
Yaku. I gotta adjust that.
You know, it depends. I won't kill anyone or rake them over the coals if they say Yaku. Whatever you're comfortable with is okay.
Well, I just want to start with, so I've been in Yaku since after I did not mint a bike, but I've been in since then. So I've been following this along, and as we've seen projects come and go and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
This is one I've stayed in, so it's interesting vision of the metaverse. But I want to get your view of what you're building, just kind of like from a 50,000 foot level, because I think it's a little different than, the Sandbox or Pixelmon or
Absolutely.
something like that.
Thank God we're different than Pixelmon.
Right? Your art is already better, which is not saying a lot, but
we're sort of taking things, like you said, from a different sort of perspective. So we're starting with what is a much more small experience from a size and scope, literally physically. So if you go and look at the Sandbox right now, they have this huge open map.
yeah, there's like, is it 100,000, 200,000 NFTs? There's a lot.
Yeah, it's like nearing 250,000 at this point. And it's good from a fundraising perspective on how much capital you have to work with, but what it's not good for is the actual user experience, which to me is like the whole reason that we're doing this, is to facilitate like a really unique and genuine online social experience.
And is that what you would call it, as a social experience, not a game? Or how do you, I mean, it's a metaverse, but like how do you kind of categorize it?
Yeah, I would say there's multiple parts to our project. Is one thing that makes us unique is we are very specifically developing on its own a racing game, in addition to
In the middle of the street. I love it.
Yeah, just balling out. We like to joke that it's like DGen Mario Kart with motorcycles. It's like if Tron and Mario Kart had a baby. It's along those lines. But so that's a unique thing for us, where some people refer to us as a game, and that's true. Other people refer to us as a metaverse. That is also true. And I think one thing in particular is when people hear metaverse, they assume it's like a singular entity, and it's really not. You have a lot of these different quote-unquote metaverses that are being developed right now, and we're all sort of competition, but also complementary to one another. And so I would sort of describe what we're trying to build as an open world, accessible experience, both socially and financially, where there will be opportunities for people to like set up businesses within the metaverse. If you're used to seeing your accountant in real life, but you would rather not, but the phone isn't quite enough of an interpersonal interaction for you, maybe this is a setting where it aligns with both of your structures, with your
So there would be like a
abilities.
business meeting side of this?
Absolutely.
You said accountant. Right now, the metaverse locations are basically apartments.
Absolutely.
It'd be kind of weird to meet me in my virtual kitchen.
You can invite people over if you wanted. But long term, that's sort of our growth pattern. So for anyone who's not familiar, as it sets right now, our sort of available real estate in our metaverse is what we refer to as capsules, and they're like apartments or flats that exist within a series of towers within the metaverse. But after we recently rolled out our first integration between Unreal Engine, which is what we're built on, and Phantom, the
Unreal 5, right?
Unreal 5.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to clarify that.
Got to stay up on the new stuff, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting thing that a lot of these projects, specifically on Solana, I guess that's where I spend the majority of my time, are using Unreal 5, which, I don't know, kind of surprised me because it's, I think, the most advanced, right? Like it's more advanced than Unity in a lot of ways, and there's probably trade-offs there. We can get there. But back to kind of the vision.
Yeah. So being on Unreal Engine 5 it gives us a lot of opportunities that were not there in previous iterations of Unreal Engine and are not necessarily available in other platforms that exist. And so part of our integration that we built between that system and Phantom, which is sort of the premier wallet system on Solana, is enabling us to build out a much broader financial ecosystem, which will be able to allow us to roll out new pieces of real estate for business purposes, for other collections to sort of get a footprint. So a great example I have of a real concept that we're actively working on is we've collaborated with another project, the Stoned Ape Crew, that they have a really robust brand around the marijuana culture, and part of their utility is they have a coin puff that you can actually use to buy in real life marijuana goods in the various areas that they are operating in. And so where we come in is creating a piece of real estate for them that is accessible for their holders. They have kind of a cool private hangout area, but also they'll have
Is this in their tower?
it is. It's
Okay.
within their tower,
Okay.
so it's the SAC tower.
Yep.
And then the main floor, they'll have like a traditional sort of coffee shop, but themed cyberpunk along with sort of our theme, like you would find in the Netherlands somewhere, that will actually be able to integrate with real financial services so that you can actually make genuine transactions utilizing their token or Solana or USDC to buy in real life goods through their storefront.
So let's use that as an example. I could go into their shop and look at their SAC branded bongs or pipes or whatever other things people who smoke
Absolutely.
use. But you would be looking at it virtually, and then you would order it with Puff, in this case, and then theoretically get it in real life, or maybe even buy it for your avatar in the Yakuverse? Would
Absolutely.
That be, okay.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting prospect because when you talk about the things like merch, we're really hammering on our end, and we're encouraging some of these other people we work with to have a one-to-one match between the real world and the metaverse.
So I get the jacket or the T-shirt that I buy.
Absolutely. And you also get one for your avatar within the metaverse to wear. So you kind of get, a pairing of your purchase.
So you talked about the Stoned Ape Crew. Unfortunately, I minted 4. I have now sold all of mine, so I'm
It's okay. You got to take profits. In
I'm
this
no
industry
longer part of the
occasionally.
crew, but I did have some nice profits there. What are the other partnerships that you have? Because one of the reasons that I've stayed engaged in this one is you're kind of picking off all the blue chips.
We're trying.
Maybe not every single one of them, but a lot of them, which I think is, I don't know, says a lot about the vision of what you're building.
Absolutely. So the DAO towers that we have committed to creating with other projects so far, we have the Stoned Ape Crew. Our first one was actually with Monkey DAO. Very excited about that one.
Arguably the biggest, most influential project on Solana.
They're definitely one of the OG collections. Full disclosure, I am a holder, so if I fanboy a little bit, I have financial incentive to.
Totally cool.
But no, I mean they've been great to work with. They actually also recently released a letter of intent to acquire the project from their devs. So being able to work with them on facilitating some like brand changes and things have been great. We're really trying to be partners.
Yeah, and so if you're not familiar with that, that would be, there was kind of a split of the project. I don't know all the details behind it, but kind of like the original devs were fighting with the DAO that wanted to take it over, and they have kind of merged into one, which it seems like everybody that I follow on Twitter who was part of that project is happy about. So
yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know, the devs of the Solana Monkey Business Project launched so early in the ecosystem. I don't necessarily know that they understood the extent of what they were taking on or how big it would become.
mm,
And so they kind of just they weren't doing much. And it was really the DAO, so the group of holders of the project who created the value in it, created what they were well known for. So it's very cool to see them actually taking on the entirety of the project now and sort of creating this unified experience in front. So anyway, for us, it's very good because we were already working directly with the DAO, and now we'll be able to sort of help with their rebranding after this unification of sorts through some of the assets they have in the Yakuverse.
okay, so let's just cover all of the NFTs first. So you started with the bike.
Yes,
Then comes the apartments, the capsules.
absolutely.
And then was the avatar. A little bit of controversy behind the avatar. What is the latest on that piece of the project?
Absolutely. So our 3 collections have like different varying utilities within the Yakuverse, just for context. So the motorcycles were our first mint. They will be used in the sort of DGen Mario Kart racing game, as well as you can just use them as transportation on the open map. The capsules will give you actually access to the map. So as long as you have a capsule, you're connected to the map. And we're going to...
And there are like different tiers of access. Like I have a penthouse now, so
Smart
I
man.
get access to some other place, like a harbor.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yep, you're right. We so part of the fun of the capsules is there are 3 different tiers. So we have the cyberpods, space suites, and then the highest is the penthouse. And they allow you different utilities like different staking yields for our token Yaku. They give you different numbers of people that you can have over to your space at any given time, as well as access to some things like you're talking about, like the Yaku Event Center and Harborfront, where we'll be having things like concerts, comedy clubs. In fact, one of my later meetings is with Audius, who they're the blockchain-based music streaming company.
Yep.
Great partner to us. We have their streaming already built into the capsule homes in the beta.
That's the Soul. Is it Soul updated or is it audio?
It's audio. Yes.
Okay.
It's
So you have audio in the capsules, and then also isn't there a live ticker basically?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So we have a few live utilities already in the beta, and right now all of those utilities are like the same for each tier, but our sort of next steps for development on that beta are, other than adding in some new cool integrations with some projects like Hawksite, that they have like an artificial intelligence-driven crypto trading signal system. They can tell you like, yes, based on our intelligence, this is a buy or a sell. So those tools will be available to holders, but in future iterations, we'll have expanded utility based on the tier. And the penthouse, of course, will be the ultimate one. Even though, I got to tell you, we have another one coming out soon. It will not be like a new mint.
The mansion.
The Mansion X. It's not that far off.
Tell me about the mansion.
So Mansion X is going to be mint using our token Yaku, as well as there's a burn mechanism for the existing capsules. So we'll reduce the existing supply a little bit, but also grant you what is a much larger space to hang out in. There's going to be some really cool proprietary utilities to it. It's also going to be in a different area of the map. So like if you're interested in securing actual square footage physically,
Because this is kind of based on, is it Hong Kong, right?
it is. So the base
So-
base layout of our map is based on Hong Kong. Yes.
So you're gonna exchange like 3 capsules for 1 mansion?
We haven't released that yet, but it'll
I
be
thought
something
I would maybe
like that.
be able to get that out of you.
All I can say is stack the Yaku, and if you've got some capsules, you'll probably be okay.
Okay, some capsules. So depending on how you define some.
And a little bit extra. How many you need will be dependent upon what tier you're holding. So the number you'll need for cyberpods versus a penthouse will be very different.
Gotcha. And you wouldn't want to give up a penthouse for a mansion.
I think you might.
Maybe?
I think when people see how they look and the
I guess
things
it depends
that come
on
with
what
it,
the cost is.
yeah.
From a
I think penthouse owners will be particularly enabled.
There was the other thing that I think is interesting. So that you said that the number of the unit, like the lower number is higher up.
Yes.
So number 2 popped up at some point, and I wasn't on my game and didn't get number 2. But I was like, oh, that'd be great to have number 2.
Well, funny enough, the highest offer we've seen so far, and this is not a joke, one of our alpha hunters on the team actually owns penthouse number 69.
Yes, I saw that.
And he was given an offer of a D-God for his penthouse number 69 and turned it down.
Wow. Okay, so I feel like that's some alpha right there. Someone from the team was basically offered 200 soul.
Well, now they're like 330.
Yeah, probably
I think
200
at the time they were like, there was like 250 at the time.
Okay, I like that.
It's the best vanity number you can have. That and Space Suite number 420.
In NFT world, yes, that's absolutely true. Okay, so I wanted to ask about the token. You brought that up, the
Yes.
Yaku token. So, and if anybody doesn't know, if you own a full set, so all 3 of the NFTs, it doubles your yield, right, from
Correct.
staking.
So right now, the base staking is 2 Yaku per day per bike, 4 per day per avatar, and 6 per day per capsule. So it gives you a total of 12. There's some added rarity-based yield on the capsules as well as on the
that's right.
bikes.
Yep.
But from a base perspective, you get 12, and if you hold one of each, you get an additional 12 per day per set. So if you're holding 3 of each, you would get 12 per day times 3 plus another 36.
And typically that comes once a week, right? And because that's not
Yes.
built into the staking yet.
Right,
There was a random airdrop, and I was like, "What in the world is this?"
You're like, why did I all of a sudden get extra money for
yeah.
no reason?
World of NFTs. Okay, so back to the space, because I think this has been one of the challenges with the metaverse spaces that have been built is how do you get people to actually use them? Like, if it's a game, how do you make a game that's actually fun to play and is not Axie Infinity, which is just like,
Let me beat this to death to try and out earn my in real life job.
Right. So what is sort of the first steps towards that? And then I assume the vision that you're talking about is much more than like what you have the ability to build right now. It seems like it's more of a kind of 3-year project, and I can all ask about fundraising and stuff like that, but like much bigger budget to build all of that out, because you're talking about a huge world that you're building. So
Yeah.
what are sort of the first steps there? Because there are metaverses out there that I don't know that there is a lot of people using them. So how do you get people to, one, play the game, and then 2, use it even on a more social level to start with?
Well, I think, honestly, even the metaverses that have a high user count right now are not really, by definition, a metaverse yet. I don't know that we will get to what is a real metaverse until, like you said, 3 to 5 years from now. What's taking
When you say
place-
a real metaverse, what do you mean?
So in a real metaverse, in my mind, you are able to have like a true interoperability between experiences. You're not siloed in to one particular quote-unquote metaverse. You're able to take your assets and sort of freely move them from one experience to another, as well as sort of craft your own experience and not be limited to the systems that exist within it. Because
So
at that
like
point,
a
it's really
decentralized Roblox.
exactly. It's like a decentralized world where you can sort of build and create your own experiences, where you have the opportunity to build out your financial life within it. I think those are really big key things that are missing right now, and I don't think we'll get there for a long time, because really what is being built right now, if we're being honest, is a system of different games. Mm-hmm. They're very similar to an open world game like World of Warcraft or Grand Theft Auto, where you sort of have these experiences and you can go out and there's proximity chat and there's social aspects to it, but it's not true to the spirit of what's trying to be built. But what is happening is these building blocks are leading us there slowly but surely. So there's a lot of talk about, the metaverse is forever away. It's a bad time to get into it, or it's a sham, and it's not really what it says it's supposed to be. And I think it's all just a matter of time and scale and getting all those things lined out over many, many years.
One piece of that is the blockchain that you're on.
Yes.
This is one thing I wanted to ask about because, I kind of cut my teeth on Solana. Stone Ape Crew was one of my first mints.
That's a good first mint.
That was lucky. But what I think has been interesting over the last 6 to 9 months is, Ethereum is where the money is. I don't think there's any question about that. But Solana has so much more theoretical potential. Now, there have been major hiccups, like the entire blockchain going down for hours at a time, multiple times this year, which is like not a great look.
It could be better, that's for sure.
But Ethereum had 2 hard forks in, was it 2014 or 2015?
Yeah.
It isn't like these technologies are mature. We talk about this being 1995 in the internet, and like it's true. Like it's very true.
100%.
But we're talking on, let's see, June 21st. Solana went through some sort of upgrade within the last week.
It's been awesome.
Seems to have done a lot to, transactions are bouncing between 2,000 and 3,000 transactions per second. You get a lot fewer failed transactions. They happen faster. So we're not at 30 to 50,000 transactions per second, which is was kind of the promise of Solana. But walk me through what the decision to build there is, especially with this 3 to 5 year timeline, because I think that's important. I mean, if you're starting a project, where do you build it? And there's a lot of pieces that go into that. And
100%.
so why was it Solana for Yaku?
Solana for us was actually a pretty easy decision, I would say. The reality is that having fast transactions is crucially important for a good user experience, especially when we're talking about scaling things up to the size we'd like to. Right now we have around 6,000 unique holders, but we would ultimately like to, again, in a long-term plan here, have hundreds of thousands, millions of active users every month. And so having a blockchain that can support that sort of user adoption is really important. But I think even more important than that, in its current state right now, what makes Ethereum unusable for particularly our use case is just the cost of gas.
Yeah.
Solana has these fees, that are pennies per transaction.
Fractions of a penny. Like I did my first mint on Ethereum that was not successful, and I burned like $200 and didn't get anything. And I had done a bunch of mints on Solana, and I was like, what in the world is this? Now, gas fees have come down since then. That was November, December, but still, it seems like the transaction cost. If you're gonna have a hat that you can buy in the Yakuverse that costs $4, and I as a creator am like, hey, if I sell 10,000 of these at the equivalent of $3 a piece, awesome. Like, I'm happy. You take your cut. We can talk about the economics of how that's going to work, because I think that's interesting too. But the low-cost transaction is impossible if you're using a blockchain that has high transaction fees.
100%. And if you're, again, trying to move towards a world where you're a genuine metaverse and you have thousands and thousands of these small transactions for not only talk about digital assets like NFTs and things, but also connected in and buying in real life goods, paying people for their services over this. Every one of those transactions, if there's gas associated with it, if it's even $5 per transaction, that adds up. If you're making multiple transactions a day, it's just, to me, that's really cost prohibitive to the average person, which on the long term is who we want involved. We don't want it to be some good old boys club forever where it's just whales that have the ability to participate. We really want to expand this.
Yeah, and there was the joke a couple of weeks ago of the person who said, like, I don't care about you on Twitter if you don't have a $100,000 NFT.
Right.
It's like, that's not really the point. If you're in this to build like an accessible metaverse with millions of people, like,
Exactly.
you can't have these being hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, my wife is never gonna, or my parents are never gonna adopt that.
Yeah.
Which I think is just crazy.
And another thing that really, I don't know if it's genuine when people raise this as a concern to blockchain technology. I think that it is a genuine concern. I just don't know that it's one that is necessarily brought up in good faith when people talk about the green economics behind it, how environmentally friendly it is. If you look at Solana as a chain, the average Solana transaction uses the same energy as like 1.5 Google searches. And that's even prior to this last update. So I'd be interested to see if, since it is moving so much faster and easier, if there's also a change to its sort of environmental impact. But that's another really good positive thing that I think people are not necessarily talking about as often with these alternative layer ones, but is really important, again, when we're talking about general adoption.
Well, and the dollars and cents play that out, right? Like,
Yes.
if a transaction costs 0.00002 cents, it can't cost the miner validator in this case, $3 in electricity
Right.
for that transaction to go through. So, I mean, I think there's, like, the fundamentals are all there. Like, it is fundamentally faster and lower cost, and you see that in actually interacting with the blockchain. I wanted to ask about Yaku and one of the things I'm interested in this space is, if all of this is going to work, the economics have to work. Like, Google is a great search engine. They make a ton of money.
Yes.
If Yaku is going to be a successful metaverse and my NFTs are going to be worth more money, you as Yaku can't go bankrupt.
You're right. That's the goal, is to avoid that at all costs.
So how does Yaku, the company, the developer, make money? So there's the mint, there's the secondary. What is sort of, but you're doing a lot of development. You have a lot of sneak peeks that come out. There's clearly money going into development. How do you fund operations? And then what's the next step? Is there a venture capital round? I think that was on your roadmap at some point. Because we're talking about if you're building this, you're talking about a $20 to $50 million, if I'm going to do back of the napkin math, investment in building this out. So that's not nothing.
Yeah, I think we're actually in maybe the best position for this, because this is a big problem, I think, in the space in general right now, where a lot of these projects come out and they don't understand necessarily that on some level they are a business. Even the projects now, especially on Solana, where there's so much utility packed into so many different projects, even if you were coming out under the guise of we're a brand, well, what is a brand? A brand is products and services. So
Right.
you need to figure out which one of those are you going to provide. Otherwise, you're not really a brand, you're just art. And if you're buying for the art, that's fine. But to, present yourself as something else.
But then you need to say, hey, this is an art project.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. It's not a business. It's not a brand.
We are where my vans go.
Exactly.
Or the nouns DAO or something like that.
Right.
Which I guess you can do something with the nouns DAO. But yeah, I think that is true, especially on Solana, where it's like we're gonna do art, and then we're also gonna be have a token, and then we're also gonna do, I don't know, insert raffle.
We're gonna do
lottery,
staking, raffles, breeding.
Yeah. Okay, so that's
it's really good because Solana fosters, with its speed and low transaction fees and whatnot, it's a great environment to test out all these different utilities. But for us, we're really well positioned from a business perspective because we already sort of have a long-term vision plan on the business, and we are very lucky that we have a team of people who are like doing okay financially in their private lives, that we can sort of, for lack of a better phrase, like eat shit for a little bit while we build this stuff out. And so like our original founder of the project, Daishaisen, he comes from a financial background. He used to work at Paribas, I believe, is the largest bank in France, oversaw huge corporate buyouts, very financially savvy guy, has not paid himself a dime yet from the project. And he has been great at setting forward, hey, here's from a financial perspective how much we need on hand from cash at any moment to be able to make sure that we can continue the project forward. Here's the income we need to generate every month to pay staff for X amount of time. So
when you do a mint, does then that get converted to USDC or euros or whatever you're actually paying people with? Because I think that's another thing that projects have probably gotten themselves in trouble with over the last 6 months, is minting something when Sol was $240.
Right.
And now it's not.
So we have been very diligent with our treasury. We always keep a little bit of Sol on hand. I say a little. It's more than like the average person probably would ever have on hand. But we always have some Sol on hand. It's just useful. It's the currency that got us where we are, and so it's easy to use in the ecosystem, and it's good just from a like balance sheet perspective for the greater ecosystem. For every mint, if you collect 50,000 Sol and then you dump it all for USDC immediately, it's not necessarily good for general price action. Now that said, obviously, if you see the charts and they're not looking that bullish, it's smart to convert. So we have a majority treasury in USDC that we have changed over at like various points in time since we've been around for a few months now. But we've always done some immediately post mint, just to be sure to book those profits. And then we've always had some that we've kept in Sol, but we're doing pretty solid there. I think that a lot of projects, luckily, the ones at least I know that we work with pretty closely, have done a pretty similar methodology, which is good to know.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see, I don't know, the change in tone within projects. And then I think coming down the pipeline is going to be either the expectation of more transparency or the requirement. I know that in the US, I think that was one of the things that has been proposed in Congress, is you have to be transparent about what you're doing with the money, or
Right.
or how much is there if you're a DAO, or and there's different ways to do that. But it seems like even from a regulatory perspective, there is a push in that direction for more transparency. Which, I mean, look, I'm a long-term holder in a lot of the projects that I own, and why wouldn't you want to have long-term transparency if you have a 3, 5, 10, 20-year vision of what you're building?
Absolutely, because the important thing there is people are so used to it in this space, the possibility of either just a hard or a soft rug, that having that transparency of, hey, we actually know what we're doing and we have a game plan and here's how we're going to implement that game plan is hugely important. It instills confidence. It's why I think for us, I feel very good about our project right now, despite market conditions, because we do have so many people in it that holds a large number of NFTs. We have a title in there specifically, fucking whale, excuse me, sorry for the French, but
I'm not quite there.
and the number of those we've had in there has only grown over time. We haven't had people who are big holders who have been dumping their holdings out of lack of confidence. The number of people joining that sort of circle and club has only grown. And so sort of like to circle back on the business question portion of it, I think them knowing that we have a vision for that is what's most important. So you're right that our project is hugely expensive to implement. And off of mints so far, we've raised somewhere in the neighborhood of like $3 million off of the 3 mints.
Okay.
And in addition to that, we've raised another like 600,000 off of royalties. So we'll round and say 4 million. It's great. We have a super long runway, but we still need significantly more than that to really accomplish what we're looking at. And how we're going to get there is through the Yaku store that we're building. So this will be sort of the central marketplace within the Yakuverse. And it will be not only a place where we can sell more assets ourselves for things like you were saying earlier, new outfits for your avatar, for new assets within your capsule home if you want to decorate it, for services and things that you'd like to list there, but also empowering creators in the community to list things there themselves as well. And then we would just function just like Magic Eden or OpenSea as a marketplace and just take, a percentage fee on those things that they've created, and that'll be a great revenue driver for us long term. The other thing, and I can't tell too much about this, but we are looking at right now, because it's growth mode for us at least, on acquiring another project that has some more specific Web3 utility to it, things like wallet management, social engagement, gamification for people. It's very outside of the scope of what we offer now, but we have this sort of vision for lack of a better term, Yaku Labs, to sort of offer this Web3 side of utility that we don't currently have to empower projects to sort of get more involved.
So first from a project standpoint, is the idea to self-fund through the end of development? Or is there so there's no, am I wrong in remembering that there was in Q4 2022, we have we'll do a VC round or something like that?
We are trying actually to avoid a VC round.
Okay.
The only reason being because we want to scale appropriately, and scaling appropriately can sometimes misalign with the VC's vision on return on investment. We're in a spot, like I said, we've got a long roadway that we can build things out on. We have a team that is pretty solid right now that we can afford to not take a lot of mint funds or royalties personally to keep ourselves afloat. So we want to extend that out as long as possible. And at least in most of our experiences, when you bring VCs in, there's a certain period of time they can go where they are cool with waiting on the sideline and maybe not recouping some of that investment. But you hit a point where vibes can change, expectations can change, and all of a sudden the gas gets turned up. And we want to do things correctly. And if that takes a little longer for us to turn an ROI personally as individuals, that's okay.
Until the Riiv VC arrives.
Right.
That is only going to fund Web3. No, but I did want to ask about the creator side of things, because I think there's multiple layers to this that are interesting. One, if you're a creator and you're making let's just say a hat. That's probably a really bad example, but
Some good hats out there. People pay a lot of money for Gucci hats.
It's true. But you make it for the Yaku verse. That requires that there's a lot of people or users in the Yaku verse. It requires that there's an economic system that works. That would theoretically be based on Yaku. Sorry. Uh, what kind of details can you give me about what that looks like? Is this going to be, if I have assets that are available in Unreal, I can make like an OBJ at home and, go and sell it? Or what does that look like? Because I think this is an interesting add-on that kind of like the App Store was with the iPhone, right? The iPhone is great, but without the App Store, without apps, it's not anything. And Apple has been living on what other people have been creating for that for a long time. What they did was build the infrastructure. So what I think you're saying, if I can put words in your mouth, is you're kind of building the infrastructure here. Your integration with Phantom Wallet is a good example of that. You're building the infrastructure to say, hey, when you're in the Yakuverse, you're going to be able to make these kinds of transactions. So from a creator side, what do they need to know about what they can and will be able to build, or when are we going to get specs on what those details are? Because I think that's an interesting ad for the ecosystem and could be a value for everybody.
For sure. And we have sort of a financial model already loosely laid out. This could be subject to change. And if we change it, it'll be subject to be more beneficial to creators specifically. But sort of in our white paper right now, what we have laid out is that 10% of all transactions that take place with our token Yaku in the Yaku store, 10% of all that Yaku collected will be burned from circulation. So 10% of anything that's spent on an item you've created is just gone as a deflationary mechanism for the token.
Now I'm going to have to ask about burning.
Okay. Another 30% is designated to go towards the DAO wallet. So that's a wallet completely controlled by holders, for those that don't know, that they would then be able to vote on how are those funds allocated. So they could say, hey, we want to sell it all every single time for USDC, and we want those funds to go towards more robust infrastructure for advertising on our homes. We want it to go towards a new level in the game. It could be truly up to them, whatever they'd like to use those funds for. The remaining 60%, we have it set out right now that it's up to quote-unquote negotiation between us and the creator as to what that split looks like. But I think probably what we'll end up netting out at is more just a flat rate fee. And if we adjust anything further, my guess is it would be that we may reduce that 30% to the DAO wallet so that we can provide more back to creators, because a lot of the FUD that came out over Facebook with Meta was they said they'd be taking 50% of fees in their Metaverse store, and people were like, wow, dude, way to just suck money out of the ecosystem. And I think it's a very Web 2 approach. I think it's pretty in line with, like you were saying, with what Apple charges for creators on their apps, but that's not really in line with the Web 3 ethos of empowering creators and creating this decentralized, ownership of the public sort of ethos. And for us, it's a very, very good added benefit to our project if people are creating cool stuff. There's only so much we can do on our team internally. We're a bottleneck to creating more cool things. We have limited bandwidth. If we can empower everyone out there to create things that make our experience better, we should do that.
So, burning.
Yes.
This is a popular thing in Web3, NFTs, tokens. I have never seen it work well. And the theory behind it makes sense on a very surface level. So there's less supply of a token, therefore the tokens that are left are more valuable. Ta-da. The reality and the reason that governments don't do that is because you want to give an incentive for people to actually spend their Yaku in this case and not hoard it. So I've been accumulating Yaku as a NFT holder. If you say, hey, in this ecosystem, we're going to be burning a whole bunch of this, there's going to be less out there, and it's going to be more valuable as a result, why would I go spend it? I think this is always a tension in tokenomics. And to be clear, tokenomics, I think as a concept is so new that we don't know the correct answers to this. This is one of the things I want to tease out with, in general, is let's just take Stoned Ape Crew as a good example. They had a tokenomics that kind of had it was like there's always a next thing and a next thing and a next thing, and then they got to a certain point and there was the next thing was and the token value dropped 90% as a result. Now that corresponded with the collapse of the NFT or crypto market generally,
Right.
so I don't want to completely put that on them. But that was one of the things that I just kept feeling in that project was, what am I really going to be using? And they kept talking about burning and burning and burning tokens on the thesis that I don't know, it was going to make it all more valuable, and it was just, the word is it's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if I'm an advisor to a project and they're asking about tokenomics, I would say don't burn anything. Just keep funding it through the holders who are earning it, so that they can keep putting it through the system, because you want an active ecosystem. Like, the most valuable thing that you can have if you're building a metaverse is people actually in it, using it, buying stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, I hate to say this, but inflation exists for a reason. Like, the government wants you to spend money, so they don't want your money to be more valuable tomorrow than it is today, because they want you to spend it today, because that's what keeps the economy going. Why am I wrong? or what is the thought process behind that? And to be clear, I don't think you have defined all of the tokenomics behind this, so I don't want to put you on the spot. But I think this is an interesting concept to talk about as projects start to figure out what their tokenomics are, and what that's going to look like long term.
Yeah. So I think that you're right that we are really early, and it's actually difficult to know the long-term implications of this. I think for us, the big thought process behind any sort of a deflationary mechanism is because we are still fairly far away from any sort of mass adoption at the scale that we've talked about, right? Getting up to hundreds of thousands of users. And a lot of projects are in that same boat where they have not hit critical mass. We are also all competing with dozens of new projects coming out every day for attention, for market share.
Maybe a good reason to buy some other projects.
You never know. And so I think part of it is trying, one, to keep attention and keep dollars in there for people to say, hey, my investment, because it's how a lot of people view it, is as an investment, is appreciating in value, is going to at least maintain its value, and there's a real use case behind it. Adding in that burning, I think, just gives some peace of mind that maybe regardless of market conditions, of the scale and size of user growth, that there's potential there outside of these other unknown conditions for value to continue to go up. That could also, like you said, be a terrible mistake. Honestly, my fear with the burning mechanism that we have lined out is that on an infinite timeline, at some point, it could become cost prohibitive. If we are burning 10% per transaction, I think on our original modeling, we were saying based on if someone had spent everything that was in circulation at the end of year one, that we will have effectively burnt 3% of the entire supply through that 10%. And if you're burning 3% the first year, it's likely it's going to be 4% the next year since there's less, and on and on. And so my concern there is if we're trying to get...
The Bored Ape Yacht Club would be, I think, a perfect example where you eventually price yourself out of the market and you go, hey, to play this game, they don't have a game yet, but to get into their ecosystem, their metaverse, at this point, even after the drop in value, is still, what, $2,000, $2,500?
Right.
How many gamers are going to do that? The 0.1% of all gamers, maybe?
Now, the backdoor solution to that is actually more simple than it sounds. It's just reduce the cost of things in Yaku. So if it's currently 10 Yaku, in the future it may be half of one.
Yeah.
Right? So having that sort of movement in price action, but what it does do in that point is it increases the value of that staking yield, of that yield you get from racing, so it can increase the value to holders. And the question is just how flexible do we get on the pricing on things in the store. So it's possible to sort of backdoor fix some of the implications, but not forever. You know, I think at some point it gets a bit ridiculous if things cost 0.01 Yaku because that's $10 or what. That's an unrealistic example, but you know what I mean.
No, that's a good point. It's just one of those things that I think we haven't figured out yet, and so
Yes, and it does feel like you said. It feels a little Ponzi-esque. It's in some cases it just is, right? So it can get a little hairy, but I think that it creates a competitive add-on for holders and a competitive incentive if done properly. Now the question is, is this long-term going to be done properly, right? Is this going to be the correct move? And time will tell. I feel pretty good about it right now. Obviously, there's always trepidations with things like this, especially if you're trying to create something huge that lots of people can partake in. But I think, knock on wood, I feel okay about it.
Why not? This is a question I have for a lot of projects. Why not just use Solana, Sol, as the token?
The reason to not use Sol is it's hard to set up some of these holder incentives like staking with Solana. For us to do staking with Solana, now
So
we could do sales with.
You could. Okay, so like a yield before you launch something effectively isn't possible unless you have your own token.
Right.
You could do it on the back end with like a royalty structure. I think you could do co-op. I forget what the legal structures are there.
Right. So right now, Yaku does not have a liquidity pool tied to it. So it's essentially only worth whatever the market will pay for it.
0.0002 Sol.
I think it's 2,000 Yaku for 1 Sol, if I remember correctly at last check.
That seems right. Yes.
So at that point, if we were doing the daily airdrop to people, if we were doing, the 12 or 30 per day with your bonus, you'd be getting, what is that, like not a lot of dollars per day, but
No.
it has a different use case specifically for the Yaku, right, that we've tried to build out. And so I think that's the main reason is it's hard to set up staking and these different incentives with Solana. It also allows us to create other fun incentives for our holders that are not as easily accessible to the public who's not generating Yaku. So as an example, we're going to be having merch come out at some point, and like I was talking about earlier, we'll have an in-real-life version that pairs with a Metaverse version, and we'll be selling those in Yaku. So it sort of creates like a proprietary benefit to our holders where on paper they will have not had to have spent any of their money aside from their investment into our NFTs to get that item.
But there again, you would argue, if I'm in it for this metaverse, I want you to spend that money on building the metaverse, not on giving me a T-shirt.
That's true. Or a wristband.
Or a wristband. That's right. There may be one of those
and
in my future.
We will do some stuff in Sol. So again, part of our business plan for the Yaku store is we will likely always have a portion of any given item that is sold for Yaku, and then another portion that's sold for Solana. And so the reason there is one for business sustainability. If we, again, talking about tokenomics, if we're taking in a bunch of this Yaku as a team and then we're selling it, we're just creating selling pressure on it and devaluing it over time. So we'd like to avoid that. Obviously, we'll have to do some of that from a business model.
Yep.
But it's a lot easier for us if we're saying, hey, 25% of the total collection of any given drop in the Yaku store is sold specifically for Solana. We can use that portion directly to fund the project. So that's sort of the breakdown we're looking at, and what the exact percentages of Yaku versus Solana are, I'm not still 100% sure because we're trying to figure out sort of the finances behind that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The example there would be the other side mint. I did a tweet thread on this last week that I believe Yuga is about $30 million underwater on their tax bill.
God.
For the other side mint, just on their tax bill, which is crazy. Two more things I wanted to ask about.
Yeah, for sure.
First thing is the art on the Yaku, the profile pics.
Yes.
if my interpretation of the comments were correct, sort of the idea was this would be an actual playable character built for Unreal Engine 5, and then you could go in and you could kind of take a picture at any angle you want. I think you had the idea of like being able to change the, things they're wearing or face masks they have on, or maybe take the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff like that. But it did not go over great with the community. And you have talked about doing some sort of changes. What kind of update can you give me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Yaku X avatars, when they came out, we were not getting the warmest reception to the art. And again, trying to make like a multi-year project here, instead of being like crawling into a hole and going, oh no, people hated it, we were like, hey, that's fine. We want your feedback. We'll adapt to it. So we've been actively updating the art. I don't know for sure yet when those updates will actually roll out, because we're just trying to take our time. Instead of creating like an arbitrary timeline of, we'll get it done in a month, we're just like, nope, they're done when they're done.
Is it a fundamental change, or is it we're going to change some stuff that people didn't like?
It's a pretty fundamental change. So they will roughly have like all of the same attributes and things, but completely restyled. So I think the big concern people had were, one, there were some like individual traits that were just very not well received. Specifically a couple facial expressions.
Yeah.
The Band-Aid on the females, I think some people had
Yes.
some weird reactions to. Some of the reactions to the teeth specifically looked a little odd in the renders finally. So we'll be adjusting some of those individual traits, but then also stuff more broadly. We'll be looking at completely different renders for like skin textures. We're completely redoing the hair. So the hair...
So it's still a 3D, because I've seen
Yes.
that in the chats as well, going back to the, I think, original artist for one of the concept pieces. And I forget the details on why that wasn't possible, but you're still going to go with kind of the 3D, hey, this is what your actual character is going to look like in the game
Yes.
concept.
We are also... Here's a little tiny bit of alpha. Okay, this is like real alpha, though. So we had talked about the photo booth mechanism.
Yeah.
Because as you buy things in the Yaku store and you adjust your avatar, you would probably like to have your profile picture reflect that change. And if you'd like it to look straight at the camera or to the right, any different angle, that's up to you. You can do it. Setting that up is relatively easy. It actually does not take very much development work whatsoever to do that. What is more difficult is to say you actually want to update the metadata to go along with those changes.
So that it shows up in your Phantom wallet.
So rather than just a picture, it's the actual metadata within your specific NFT that changes. And so this project I alluded to earlier that we have talked about, hoping to bring into the Yaku fold, not like a full acquisition, but sort of a merger of sorts.
Gotcha.
They actually, part of their proprietary tools is a system that specifically does that, where you can go in and update yourself in a self-serve sort of portal, the metadata on your NFT. So that will be a very exciting thing, and we'll be changing all of those different attributes that you would be able to buy in the Yaku store to suit the updates on the original art. And I mean, we're doing everything from literally strand by strand creating new hair models to creating new, much more updated, realistic versions of different clothing attributes and things. I mean, when people see them, it's going to take a little while because we're just taking our time trying to do things right and see what all of our options are. Like, we've tried several different render styles on skin to see which looks the best, which fits with the rest of the art. So it'll be a little bit, but when they're finished, I think people will be blown away at the difference.
Final thing, what does this market mean to Yaku, to the space generally? We were kind of in crazy land when you did your first mint. By the time you did your third, it was pretty muted. And now we've kind of collapsed another level.
Yeah.
Are we going to see a bunch of projects just wash out? Is the cream going to rise to the top? Like, are blockchains going to fail? Like, what do you think is going to happen in the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months if we take a long-term horizon?
So there will definitely be projects that wash out, without a doubt. There's already projects that wash out in a good market. In a bad market, you'll just see the number of those double, triple, quadruple. I think you'll also see, similar to us, projects that are doing really well, looking to grow, potentially acquire other projects, using this as an opportunity to really build and take market share. In the traditional world of business, if there's a downturned economy and you're increasing your spend on things like marketing, you're going to increase market share and you're going to reap those rewards when things turn around. I feel very similarly about the world of Web3. I also see a lot more collaboration happening right now.
Yeah, that's what's been interesting with all of your collaborations.
It's just really kicked up. I mean, the good people who are going to be around understand that we are so early. The market cap for this space in general is still so low, and there's so much room for growth that it doesn't make sense to be fighting one another for small pieces of the pie if we can truly grow the entire pie. So it's a great example. We actually have a Twitter Spaces coming up right after NFT NYC is done, with like 6 other Metaverse projects, all on Solana. And we're not going on to shill projects. We're just going to strictly be talking, hey, here's what's going on with the space right now. Here's sort of how we envision working together long term. So those sorts of things.
And it seems like you're all developing a lot of tech that could potentially be used either together or, in some different ways. I know one of them is Desolates, which I used to own a Desolate. They were doing some cool dev stuff. I was like, I don't know why I want to hang out on a planet, but like I like your tech. Sorry, that's my commentary. I do think that's a really interesting and maybe unique dynamic on Solana.
Yeah, Solana's much more. I don't have a whole lot of exposure to the Ethereum NFT world. We actually work with a few projects because we are looking at adding MetaMask as an integration into the Yakuverse, so we could include some of these really cool Ethereum collections. I just don't have as much personal exposure there. But I have heard that the world of Ethereum is slightly less collaborative. Yeah. It's not quite so wag me vibes, which we don't have to dive into that. But Solana, that's I think a big benefit that is maybe joked about, but is actually truly overlooked, is how collaborative and kind and open and so many of these projects are. When we were starting out, I know that we would not have gotten the exposure and success that we did were it not for other projects helping us out. One of our first really big successful collaborations was actually with the project, the Bounty Hunter Space Guild. They are an incredible core community of people that are very active, super nice, and we did some collaborative giveaways and art together with one another there, and they were just an existing community that really empowered and took on the beginnings of our community. So that sort of stuff is, I think, very, very cool about Solana. I think it's also just a sort of benefit that's hard to put a tangible value to, but is huge.
I know I said that was the last question. I have one more.
Okay, I'm ready.
How do you research projects? I know you've tweeted a few times in the last couple of weeks things that you own or are bullish on. As somebody is getting into NFTs for the first time, it seems scary, right? You hear about
so
rugs,
much fun, actually.
You hear about stuff getting hacked. You hear all kinds of terrible stories. How do you research and find the cool stuff that you want to stick with for? I mean, long term in the NFT space can be a month, but let's say let's say 6 months, a year, 5 years. Like, what stands out to you that goes like, wow, I want to be part of that?
So this is actually how I got my start in Solana NFTs in general. My first NFT I ever actually bought was actually on Crypto.com's NFT platform, which is hysterical. But that's been like 15 months or so ago now. I bought their first celeb collaboration with the rapper K Camp, and I flipped it for like $200 profit. And I was like, okay, this is so easy. I'm gonna get rich doing this, which is not the case. It's definitely not how it worked out. But that was how I got my start, was just actively flipping. And I started working on flipping stuff in Solana back in like late August of last year, so fairly early. And the thing that was the most important to me that helped me find success in finding quick profits on stuff I could get rid of after a mint or whatever, and on finding the long-term investment opportunities with projects that I've held for months and months now, the other people in the space. Like finding a community of people that you can interact with. There are literally some days 50 projects launching on a single day. to have information on all 50 of those, and then the next 50 the next day, and the next, it's just not possible for one person to do.
Right.
But if you've got a community of people that are all exchanging information and ideas, it makes it way simpler. So I would say the first thing to do, find a proven long-term collection that has a reputation for quote-unquote good alpha, and I would start there. You can join, there's some that like all varying price entry points. If you're looking for one that's like very affordable to get into, obviously I would recommend Yaku Corp. We have some daily calls and things that go out from our alpha hunters, a great one. Some other ones out there, I would throw out NF Trees is a great one. You have to have 3 of them to get into their alpha, but they're like 0.8 each right now, something like that. So for less than 3 Sol, you can get in there. I would also look at formerly Zombie Punks, recently rebranded to Karabasan. They're a floor of like 1 Sol, and they're a very active group. They've got a leader in there now named Bam One Shot, who's very solid. But I would research those. Find those low entry communities that they have an active core community, and just ask questions and learn. I also have a private alpha DAO that I operate called Culture DAO. You could also buy those if you want. They're like 3 Sol-ish floor, I think, right now. And those are the people that when I'm like, guys, I've been busy for the last 3 days. I just moved. I'm going to NFT NYC. I don't know what's going on in the market. Those are the people who are active, who I trust, that I know will have good information for me. Generally, if you're looking on your own, I think the single most important thing you can look at is the team.
Yep.
Are they active? How often are they posting on Discord? Are they doing Twitter Spaces where you can hear their voice, without being able to pre-plan for questions and things? That's the number one thing, because no matter how good their roadmap looks, no matter how good the art is, if the team sucks, they're not going to be able to implement. They're not going to be able to create the community they say they will. That to me is the single most thing, and everything after that's cherry on the cake. If you want to go out and get great art and you really like the roadmap, that's cool. But team first.
Well, thanks so much for the time. Enjoy the rest of your time at NFT
Absolutely.
NYC.
It was great to see you.
And we will. I'm excited to.
I have a question
see the
for
future
you.
for Yaku. Yeah.
What are you excited about as far as NFTs coming up? Is there any collections that you're really interested in? Are there any sort of changes to collections you're in that you find exciting?
I'm looking for the collections I'm in to mature. So, Yaku's a perfect example of that. Enviro should be coming out with their actual product pretty soon. There was a interesting space with Psychedelics Anonymous is another one I'm in.
Oh, cool.
That they're doing, a marketplace with traits, so you can change your. I have a Genesis. I don't really like it, so I would love to. I would love to change it a little bit. So I was like, that's great for me. But I'm excited about the maturity of the space.
Yeah.
I think what's great about a bear market is it flushes out the people who aren't here for the right reasons, and it keeps the people that are, because they can see the 5-year vision or the 10-year vision. So I'm excited to see how that plays out, and I don't know where that leads us, but generally I think there's a lot of bullish things going on in the disruption of.
Absolutely.
You highlighted a lot of it for Solana specifically, so appreciate the time, and we'll keep following Yaku for sure.
Absolutely. Give us a follow, Yaku Corp on Twitter, yaku.corp on Instagram.
All right, you got those plugs down. Thank you. Appreciate it.